Years ago, I heard a story where thieves broke into a data center through the roof and lowered themselves ninja style on cables. Seriously, Mission Impossible style. Though rare, these attacks do in fact happen, but far more likely, a nondescript person approaching a locked door, their arms full of boxes, asking for someone to let them into the office. Someone finding a dropped key or pocketing it, someone figuring out that the side door never quite clicks shut unless someone leans on it. These are the risks that we can fix. This applies to cyber attacks as well. Some will be planned as full frontal assaults from nation state actors, but most they'll sneak in through your weakest access point. There's no castle door to guard. The things you care about, your secrets, your data, your intellectual property, your favorite humans, they're working from home or distributed in the cloud. The metaphor of locking up your treasures in a vault fails often because the modern world is so complex. How do you approach this problem of security? It's chaotic, it's panic inducing. $1 trillion in global loss last year is a number too big to really parse. Companies spend billions of dollars defending themselves. Breaches exposed about 5 billion records in the last year alone. The news is full of supply chain attacks against products that let villains pivot into customer environments. Everyone's seen it. It's a constant refrain of breaches, hackers, ransomware, and privacy leaks. Companies do get harmed greatly. Some shut their doors, lose millions, get a reputation for being lax. This risk is real. Hackers are really out there doing their nefarious deeds. Some of this has the ring of a blockbuster movie to it, but really, these are criminal acts trying to exploit weaknesses and take what we've earned or make us look bad for kicks. As often as a hacker in a hoodie sticks it to the man on TV, in real life, they're out there targeting hospitals and pacemakers and grandma's social security check. But we can plug the holes, we can make their lives harder, and never be the low hanging fruit that gets picked first. That ounce of prevention can pay off. So here's my pitch. You can do this. It's achievable. You don't need to panic. Some breaches and incidents do break their companies or cause irreparable harm, but most cyber incidents don't. And no amount of panic is going to help you. What you need now is a way to think about this problem clearly and model for deciding what to do. While the cyber world can be scary and full of dramatic news stories and movie representations of hackers in hoodies, you can make a huge improvement in your security and resiliency without a large dedicated team of professionals. So let's get to it. The best and most practical way to think about security is, where is your risk? How can you mitigate it? Now, mitigation doesn't mean fix it all. It means soften the risk, understand it, and make it tolerable. So you need a new context for your thinking. These are not necessarily engineering problems where the gears need to mesh in just one way. There is some art to this, and a lot of it is subjective. What are your treasures? What are the core risks to those treasures? And are you outside your risk tolerance? There's a bit to unpack here. Knowing what you care about and how much risk your organization can weather is really a key piece. This is the heart of my proposal here. Don't think so much about technology. That is a tool and a good one, but think about risk. Write down your worries, bullet them into risks you can focus on, talk about them with your team and with the business. Aim for a checklist of items you don't feel like you can safely ignore. You can solve for these things through people or processes or technology. You can get insurance for some or transfer some of that risk to external vendors or support services. Think very broadly about the possibilities. And number 2 on my list is decide for yourself. Don't let events pull you along. This means you need to be a bit proactive. But you'll find that when you make decisions on risk and how you want to manage those risks, outcomes are easier to predict and recovery is less troublesome. Security is a business enablement function, but my instinct is not immediately to support productivity or lock down all the things as a singular goal. It's to reduce risk by finding a balance between productivity and risk. Know what your business needs to maximize its productivity and its effectiveness, but also understand your tolerance for risk. What can the business accept and what can it not? This will form the basis for making informed decisions about risk. I'm going to try to cover the basics of what security is, what topics you need to know, and a rough outline of how I think you should be thinking about lowering your risk. Security is, by and large, according to its definition in the dictionary, freedom from risk or danger, which I think does a pretty good job in the context of information security as well. It's the people and the processes and the tools that defend an organization's technology and the data they hold, protecting those assets from being stolen, accessed, modified, or exploited by anyone you don't want to do those things. Threat actors is the term of art, but frankly, they're often just criminals with goals you don't need to understand, but just assume you're not really going to like them. What risks do I have to solve for? The ones you can't live with, the ones that keep you up at night or make your engineers sweat, the ones you can't explain to your customers or can't justify for yourself. How can I solve for security? It's impossible to eliminate risk. It's impossible to stop 100% of incidents. Doing nothing isn't viable either. This is a long arc with the business grinding to a halt at both ends. A bank vault can't handle too many transactions and isn't a very inviting partner, but it's very secure. Leaving the doors unlocked could lead to equally little business getting done. We're seeking a balance in everything. We work with the business to manage those risks, the things that are going to prevent us from improving our market position, our branding, our trust that the customers have in us. Jamf, for example, we're always in motion. Security risks are always evolving. So our department is always reassessing what it takes to get the job done. There's no victory condition for security. It's not winnable. It's a constant struggle against an evolving risk. The CIA triad, this is one of the most common ways to describe what security does and should do. And what that is protecting the confidentiality, the integrity, the availability of your systems and data. Confidentiality. Is my stuff protected from prying eyes? Not only privacy, but this is a good model, right? Preventing information from being accessed without authorization. Integrity. Is the data in a known state? And are you confident that it can't be altered without authorization, tampering, or data corruption? Is my data complete and unaltered? And then availability. Are your services and systems consistently accessible? This is a metric I'm sure you focus on all the time. Secondly, understand your drivers. There's a lot of different motivations that can drive security. And if you don't have a clear one, it's wise to think about it. Security can be scary and controls can be difficult to implement. You're going to need a rudder, a core belief about the need to maintain your course. Options are, compliance, SOC 2, ISO 27001, FedRAMP, and StateRAMP. There's quite a few frameworks that can help you reinforce your message to your customers and demonstrate your business's commitment to security and privacy. Jamf, for one, uses SOC 2 to define how we measure our security controls. We use ISO 27001 or 27701 as our model for managing security and governance practices. Another option is regulatory. We're nearly all under the wing of GDPR, ensuring privacy and data management and transfer between countries. But are you in an industry that requires you to follow additional standards? Banking has FFIEC, healthcare has HIPAA or high trust. If you process credit card data, you might need to comply with PCI. These can be excellent motivations and give you good frameworks. Breach. Hate to say that term. Nothing quite motivates a business to mature their cybersecurity programs like a significant security incident. It can be a wake-up call. Where under investment or lack of focus comes to the center as the root cause of failures. No one wants this to be the driver. But if bad things happen, you need to learn from them and use them to help drive your program. Finally, best practices, standards, and keeping up with your peers are classic motivations. What your competitors do or your partners and friends and neighbors. Security is a team sport. Using others as a benchmark is a tried and true method for driving change. Looking to threats. There are quite a variety of threats, and I'll just survey through a few of them. Cloud vulnerabilities. The security bar in cloud is really high. Perhaps it isn't higher than others, but it's certainly different. You can't measure at the edge firewall and be done with it. Many services and APIs can be exposed to the internet. The consequences and complexities of operating at scale in the cloud needs real thought and expertise. There are a number of required tools and configurations, lots of native automations. It's very daunting, but it's an opportunity as well as a risk, right? I don't want this to sound ominous. You have great controls in the cloud to solve security problems, and there are many services that can help you align your cloud with those goals. Malware and ransomware. This is the top talker, the biggest risk in many organizations. Something gets into your machine and replicates, it moves through your network, laterally through your user machines or servers. The real issue here is that the scope of the damage it can cause is great. A single failure can impact dozens or hundreds of systems. Preventing this is the core of what we're going to try to do here. Phishing is the most common vector of risk. We've trained people for 30 years to click on links. It's the main way people experience and participate in the modern world. We can't be too shocked that people click bad links as well. These attacks can be precisely targeted to risky individuals or folks with access to sensitive information. Lastly, social engineering. It's been proven time and again that complicated exploits and hacking past your firewall, dramatic though they may be, are often less successful than just politely asking for someone's credentials. Humans are a helpful bunch. We're inclined to hold the door for someone carrying boxes, impersonating a person in need, or asking the right questions, backed by good intelligence on answers. Oftentimes, this is quite successful. The results of these are often the same. A lack of trust. Losing confidence of the marketplace can be devastating, hard to come back from. You don't want to be known as that company who can't be trusted with your customer-sensitive data. Loss of business, loss of confidence leads to loss of business. It can be hard to measure, but in a competitive world, getting leads through your sales pipeline is hard. Security hurdles are just one more drag on your business. Non-compliance, we talked about compliance with GDPR, for example. Fines can be quite large. A failure to comply with PCI requirements can interfere with your ability to process payments. For every standard, there's a consequence. Strong security is more than just an effective business strategy to offset liability and reduce risk. It's an ethical obligation, right? Our customers trust us to do the right thing, to protect them from foreseeable issues, and to do our best to protect our data and their interests. How to solve for security? The NIST CSF or cybersecurity framework is a core model used to describe best practices and standards for managing security risk. What this means is it's the language of security, and it's important to have a high-level understanding of the topic. Identify. Systems people access data. What do you have and what do these things do in the context of your business? Prioritizing risk. What are your assets? Who are your suppliers? What are the requirements that apply to you? Protect. Limit or contain the impact of a potential event. Protections around identity or access, physical door locks, all the way to multi-factor authentication or tokens, security awareness training, maintenance, patching, policies, agreements. These all fall into the protect category. Detect. Timely detection of cybersecurity events. How do you detect issues? How do you measure their potential impact? Continuous monitoring, looking out for anomalous events and behaviors. Respond. What action to take in response to a detected incident? This is all about containing the impact. Response planning, communication, forensic analysis. Most importantly, perhaps, learning lessons from detections and integrating that into your planning. And finally, recovery. Developing plans for resilience and workflows on how you are going to restore service impacted by an incident. Getting yourself back to normal operation. Compliance focus here, right? It's good to understand at least just at a high level. SOC 2 is a basic measurement of security maturity. SOX is a requirement for public companies that also contains a number of security requirements. PCI, if you process payments at scale, security compliance is a must. ISO 27001 is a measure of your information security management system, policy and governance infrastructure. HIPAA or high trust, these are for protecting medical records. Many of these frameworks can give you clues on how to proceed. Looking to pre versus post incident, here's another concept that's important. It's always cheaper to fix issues early, but sometimes it's impractical and sometimes it's out of your control. Prevention is a low cost, but it takes forethought and diligence to push changes that might not be popular with your users. Should your users have administrator rights on their machines? Should you police the applications they download or the websites they visit or what data they move or where they put it? Each of you is going to have different answers for these, but an ounce of prevention is certainly worth a pound of cure. And then the forensic side. When prevention fails, you need to have a plan for recovery. This can include forensics, or put another way, how are you going to investigate the exposure? Do you have logs or tools? Do you have MDM, anti-malware, anything that can help you determine the blast radius of the issue? More information is always better. Looking to risk mitigation strategies. Think about risk this way. You need to measure all the risk, but you don't need to solve for all the risk. In this graphic, the risks we are interested in, low probability, low impact, it's good to fix them if it's cheap in terms of time and materials, but you might be safe ignoring it. High probability and high impact, prevention is getting really important. But low probability, means in some of these cases, you might reasonably focus on recovery or post-event, or you might invest only a limited amount in closing those. So understanding where you are, some things to remember, right? Avoid the emotional panic of these events. These are rational decisions you're making. Talk to the business, make sure everyone understands the trade-offs. A simple model, probability times impact. Ask 10 people in your organization what risk to the business or your tech stack they think about. Throw a brainstorming session, bring some cookies. People always go for that. Then make a chart for yourself. Put a few risks on it and discuss them with your team as you start to get a common sense of what language you're going to use to talk about risk. Put a scoring system together, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. Try to calculate a risk score for issues you identify. A simple way is, once everyone knows the rules, ask several people to each secretly assess the probability and the impact. Make sure to use people with different ways of thinking or different skills. Average those scores and see where you are. Sort your list. Now you've gone from having a list of largely random risk to the business to a risk register, and you're well on your way to a functional program. Think about the cost of mitigation versus the value of the assets. Now that you have your list and a rough calculation, stack ranking that risk, think about what it's going to take to mitigate. You don't need to fix them all. If you can shave a few points off either of them, either the probability of something happening or the risk it poses to the business, definitely do that. This is mitigation. This is the word security folks love. If fixing a flat tire by replacing the wheel is $100, but a tire patch is $10 and it gets you 50 more miles down the road, you need to think about what you really need in that moment. Can you stockpile resources? Can you double down on system backups to lower the overall impact or risk of loss? Can you add better privilege or identity controls to reduce the likelihood of something? You can get the risk to a place you can live with, and that gives you time to plan or invest in longer term fixes. It isn't binary. There's a whole spectrum of acceptable outcomes. Thinking about controls, tools. Don't just buy tools. Lots of people spend lots of money on tools that provide limited value. What you want to do is relieve pressure on your team so they can think about the problems your business have, and security is just one piece of it. So you need to really look at the value proposition. What outcomes do you need? What data do you need to do that? What tools do you need to get to that data? Security fundamentals tend to be the same as they've always been. Identity and access management, configuration management, managing assets. All these bubble to the top of us knowing who is doing what and accessing what information. It's harder to measure for remote workers. You really need to think about these things. Inventory, asset management, CMDBs. Thinking about inventory. What do you struggle with? What don't you have good measurements of? Are you a Mac shop? Do you have Windows or Linux machine? Is it some kind of mix? What controls you put in place are going to be influenced by this. Looking at endpoints, device management, lots of complicated acronyms, EDR and MDR and XDR, but it all comes down to how you want to see your endpoints. EDR is one pane of glass for your devices. MDR lets you get outside help into the mix, usually adding a service layer that can help you manage alerts. XDR is the new thing, right? A desire for all your tools to populate their information in one place and share data between your tools. It can get you up to speed quite quickly and is quite valuable. These tools can often be complementary. When you think about SIM or logging of data, is that something you really need? XDR might be a way to bridge that. Network security. Network security can be simple, firewalls or web application firewalls, or complex network anomaly detection. It's okay to focus on the hosts, on the endpoints to start, but there's a lot of good indicators in your network and a lot of good controls that limit access or help you measure it. Access controls, uh, restrictions on who has access to what, least privilege, can get you through. If you lose a credential or to a phishing message, if that person can only access a few non-critical systems, then the blast radius of that incident goes way down and the criminal's job gets way harder. Password policy. Likewise, hard passwords make evildoers' jobs much harder to accomplish. Multi-factor authentication. MFA should be implemented everywhere it can possibly be implemented. It takes the most common issue, the loss of credentials or brute force attacks against accounts, trying to guess passwords. It makes that nearly impossible. No single thing will improve your security posture as much as MFA will. Identity providers. Identity is hard, but there's a lot of value to be had if you're ready. See if you can't get to a single identity provider, one source for distributing rights and measuring success. These providers can often get you access to MFA or single sign-on as well. Single sign-on, to segue, is kind of the last part of the access control story, a way of ensuring all your systems use a single set of well-managed credentials to grant access. With MFA and strong password policies, SSO can get you to a simple, streamlined process that's easy to manage without having rogue one-off passwords in 20 different systems. SIM, SIM takes a long time to implement and gain value. Again, oftentimes it's not necessarily in the early parts of your planning. Looking at mitigation, you're looking at auditing, about data aggregation or scanning your environments. These things are important. Whatever tools you get, ensure that they have the capability to help you mitigate all these issues. And then looking at policy, user training. Everyone needs to know a bit about security and privacy in the modern business environment. The risks are too great to ignore. They need to hear about phishing links and the importance of securing credentials. They need to patch all their software. Remote access. Who can do what from where? Do your work from home staff have access to anything that they do in the office? That's totally fine, but it's something you need to decide and document. Are there requirements for securing their home network, for example? Acceptable use. Everyone needs to have a common understanding of what is appropriate use of business networks, what they can and they can't do on the internet. These are the guidelines everybody should abide by. A little bit of documentation can go a long way. Heading toward the final takeaway, what should you do first? Know what you're protecting. Be practical about how you can help your business succeed and align those goals. Get a simple risk model going for stack ranking risk. Impact times likelihood. Ask a couple of subject matter experts. Find some sharp people in your org. Let folks brainstorm all the risks they think about or read about. Get them all written down. Preference situational awareness. The right information at the right time in the right hands to make informed decision. This is the real key to success. You need to think a bit like an insurance adjuster. Where can my available investment lead to the best possible outcomes? How much effort can I afford and what risk can I buy with it? What risk avoidance can I buy with that investment? Find a place to start. Look at your risk register. How does risk differ from fear? Again, this is a key piece. These are rational business decisions. This is not panicking. The further ahead you get, the earlier and more preventative your actions, the less there'll be a risk of fear or causing crisis or having to go into some heroic mode down the road. It's not necessary. No one can tell you the answer here. Everyone needs to evaluate their risks and risk tolerance a little bit different. Costly modeling of risk. You need your own model, and there's lots of frameworks that can help you out there. Think about what you can just buy. I tend to think of good processes and smart people and where you get the most of your benefits. But there are cases where you can just spend money to buy your way to offset a risk. And look for those opportunities. When it comes down to it, where can you invest the least to gain the most benefit? Here's my opinion. Device management. Know where your assets are and make sure they're patched effectively. Know where your applications are and patch them. Look to your cloud providers. Use the native tools they provide for detection and prevention of issues. Make sure you can put eyes on key events and data. You don't want to be blindsided. Take some steps to prevent malware from running on your user workstations. Look to an XDR or an MDR platform, one that would allow you to consolidate your event data in one place, and also potentially look to outsource event triage. Good endpoint protection can give you a lot of confidence in the integrity of your computers and servers. Protect your passwords. Look into identity management through an identity provider or single sign-on tool. Enable MFA everywhere you can. Protect yourself from phishing. This can be training and tooling. Your mail gateway might have native tools to help you. Simplicity in all these things is critical. Complexity is itself a security risk. Anything that allows you to centralize your tech stack or security controls is a good thing, getting you to a spot where it's easy to understand what is going on. Security is a mile wide and a mile deep, but this isn't where you need your head to be. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to eliminate risk completely. Even though your job can be hunting risk and standing on the wall protecting the business, figure out how to maintain work-life balance and maintain your mental health here. Security can be very scary. Don't let it impact you. This is an effort that you can just accomplish, right? Diligence, proactive management, get your list going of risks to address and just start knocking them off. It's been a hard couple of years to be in security, but I promise your business needs you to succeed and to do what you need to survive this mission, right? Good tooling, automation, good governance. It's all going to help you hit your goal. Ultimately, don't panic. I'm confident you can do this. Jamf is here to help. The security community is here to help. This is a team sport, and you've got this. Thank you.